discussing, my thoughts are this. When I hear that, they're talking about the unexpected turn that happened within their life. They believed that Jesus would be the one. They believed that he would be the Messiah. They believed that he would provide and put a chicken in every pot, provide everybody with a job, and that he would overcome or conquer and replace the Roman Empire with Israel being the main empire in that region. And so it didn't happen like they expected, and it didn't happen the way they wanted it to happen. The unexpected happened. And so I believe that when they were walking along like two friends do, after experiencing what they experienced, they were probably saying, well, we thought, or we hoped, or why? While the rest of Jerusalem were while the rest of the people that came to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration were returning to their homes, to their communities, wherever they were going, these two were leaving filled with grief and sadness because the unexpected happened. By the way, this is normal. I want you to know that. When the unexpected happened, we are supposed to grieve what was. When the unexpected happened, we are supposed to be overwhelmed and sad by what's happening around us. It's a normal reaction to what we're experiencing in those moments. And sometimes when we experience that, we can't really see too much around us. We can only feel our way through the fogginess of our lives in those moments and try to find the familiar and the presence of being together with someone else so that they will listen and hear what we're experiencing. So they're leaving Jerusalem. They're going to this insignificant, unknown little village called Emmaus, and they are talking about what they've experienced, what they have heard in the way of rumors about the resurrection, and they are talking about the unexpected nature and the loss of hope that they've had in these moments, a brokenness in a relationship with what they thought would be the one. And as they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Now, in another translation, in the New Living Translation, see, there's, I don't know if you know this, there's probably 10, 11, 12 different translations of the Bible. Basically, a bunch of people got together and decided, well, we're going to make it sound like this or we're going to make it sound like that. That's okay, by the way. It really is. Some churches like the King James Version. More power to them if they want to try to pronounce those words with all these these and thous and us's. It's all good. We use all kinds of, today we're using a New Revised Standard Version. Sometimes we use the New Living Translation. It's all good. But what this does, in verse 16 it says, their eyes were kept from recognizing him. It leaves it kind of wide open for us to say who or what kept them from recognizing Jesus. Now, in another translation, it says that God kept them from recognizing Jesus, which is interesting. I find it significant. I find it significant, and I begin to ask questions about that. Why did God keep them, meaning those who needed to understand and know that the resurrection was real? They needed to know the hope of that resurrection. They needed to know the grace of that resurrection. Why did God keep them from seeing that that was Jesus? Why did God take his time in revealing who Jesus is and was to them? Was God building to a crescendo? Was God maturing them? In other words, growing them up through the process. Or maybe God was maturing their trust. Did God wait to reveal Jesus because of how the others reacted? You remember last week I talked about there was confusion when they found out that Jesus was resurrected. Of course there was. Why wouldn't there be? They've never experienced anything like this before. So maybe God kept them from knowing it was Jesus because of how the others reacted to what they saw or experienced or witnessed. Or maybe a patient God was enabling them and us. This patient God was enabling them and us to be patient with the circumstances of the unexpected that happened. Maybe we need to learn from the waiting part of life. Maybe it's in the waiting or in the fumbling around in the fogginess of the unexpected in life that enables us to better follow Jesus. Or maybe the patience or the waiting part of our lives enables us to have a deeper trust of the reality of God. Or maybe the waiting in the unexpected enables us to really see God for who God is and not some made-up version that we have in our head and our hearts. And so Jesus said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" And they stood still, looking sad. And then one of them, whose name was Cleopas. Now, I'm sure last time I preached this, I probably pronounced it a different way. I'm pronouncing it this way this morning. It sounds better. Are you the only... Listen, I love this question. I think this is my favorite question in the entire story. I love this question because they're basically asking Jesus, who they don't know it's Jesus, have you been living under a rock? And he actually was for 3 days, right? Oh my gosh, I cracked myself up. That's funny. I just thought of that. I got to write that down. Oh my goodness. All right, anyway. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you living under a rock?" No. "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that had taken place there in these days?" And then Jesus asked them, "What things?" Here's what I know. This is what I know about God. I know that God knows everything that is going on around me and in me. I know that God already knows what's ahead of me. I already know that God is already preparing me for what's ahead of me. I already know that God knows what's going on, and yet God still asks questions like this, and you got to wonder why he asks questions like this, even though he knows what's happening. And I think God asks us those questions because he wants us to say what's there. God is basically giving us permission to say what we're feeling and what we're experiencing. God's giving us permission to be absolutely honest about where we are in our lives, no matter what that may be. Because I believe it's to enable us and to grow us and to mature us in how we trust who God is. That's what I think. Or at least that's what I believe. I think in the waiting, and I think in the way we are honest with God, it breaks off the rough edges of our lives and reveals to us who God really is within our lives, and not a version of God that we want to believe in. So maybe God in Jesus said to them what things so they could articulate what they were feeling and what they were experiencing. So they go on. They say the things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. Notice that they had in their mind who Jesus was supposed to be and not who Jesus really was. He was supposed to be the Messiah. He was supposed to be the one to save them. He was supposed to be the conquering warrior to sweep over the Roman Empire and reestablish Israel as the ultimate empire. But our leading priests and other religious leaders arrested him, handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had thought he was the Messiah who had come. We hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. And moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning. Notice it was the women who noticed that Jesus was resurrected. And even though they were completely confused about what was going on, they realized what was going on, and they began to share that with everybody else around them. And when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. And some of those who were there, who were with us, went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but did not see him. They believed that this Jesus, this resurrected one, was supposed to be a conquering king. Instead, he was a humble servant who was crucified on the cross and was resurrected so that we could have life. So that nothing would ever get in the way of our relationship with him and God's relationship with us. But that wasn't what they wanted. What I find, though, is that when God allows the experiences to happen within our lives, as we walk through these experiences, and God is always present with us in those experiences, he's trying to get us to trust him with a deeper reality of our lives because of who he chooses to be. And it may not always be the healer. It may be the Savior. It may not always be the provider like we would like for him to provide, but he's always our Savior. No matter what we experience, there's a trust that happens in the walk and in the assumptions that we assume that God should be this, and God's saying, no, I'm not that, I'm this. I am always present with you no matter what you experience within your life. And I will give you what I know you need. Are we okay with that? Or we rather have what we want? Even though our vision for life is limited, do we still want what we want and not trust in the God who knows it all to give us what we need? Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets had declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" And then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. Here's one thing you're going to see all throughout Scripture. I don't care if you start in Genesis and work your way through. By the way, I've never done that, ever. I just want you to be aware. I have never worked my way through the Bible. I am not that kind of pastor. All right, I haven't finished the Bible in 365 days. It's impossible because I have ADD. I get distracted. I hear somebody's reading this part of the Bible, I'm like, yeah, I want to join you in reading that part of the Bible. And then I miss like completely, and then I got to go back, and then I got to start over again. I am not that guy, but if you look from Genesis all the way to Revelation, if you read it, or even if you read just the big stories, even if you don't get stuck in Leviticus, if you read the Psalms, if you read Job, if you read any of the history that goes on, even if you read at the very beginning in Genesis with Adam and Eve, and you work your way through, you're going to see this one truth, this unbelievable truth, this absurd truth, this truth about who God is that God chooses to be with us no matter what is going on in our lives, even when we don't choose to follow his path. And we are foolish in thinking that we can pursue our own path. We are foolish in thinking that if we pursue our own path, that it'll actually work out the way we want it to work out, when God's like saying, no, trust me, follow me. I'm going to stretch you. I'm going to refine you. I'm going to make you more mature through the unexpected moments in your life. All necessary when we're following Jesus, so that we have a deeper trust of what's happening, and so that no matter what we experience when the unexpected happens, we can trust that God is with us in it, no matter what's happening, growing us up to be more like him. You know, those moments happen. We read the scriptures and we can see that God is with us. When we are together, by the way, when we do this on a Sunday, when we meet in smaller groups, when we have communion, we realize this truth, that God chooses to be with us in it. Because there are those people that we get together with every week, or we spend time here, and we realize that those people, God shows up in them and through them, so that we can know that God is present. That it's in these unexpected turns in life that God breaks off the rough edges of how we see life, and how we see relationships, and how we see God. I was reading something from Christine Kane. She is an evangelist, and she wrote this week. I'm sure this is, I follow her on Instagram. All right, I'll just put it out there. I follow her on Instagram. And she wrote, God's first priority for us is always transformation, a change from the inside out. He almost always transforms us before he can transform our circumstances. Let me say it again. He takes care of what's going on inside of us before he changes what's going on outside of us. And even if he doesn't change what's going on outside of us, he's always going to change what's inside of us to provide us with a deeper trust, faith, confidence in him. Because I'll be honest with you, this whole resurrection thing, that's really unexpected. They didn't expect it at all. They probably didn't expect 2022, 23, 2400 years later, you all can do the math, you don't need me to do that math, that we'd still be celebrating and worshiping the resurrected one, who provides us with hope, reminding us that if he can walk out of the tomb and overcome, God is and always will be, and chooses always to be with us, to use our circumstances, to change us to be more like Him. Verse 33, it says, the same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem after Jesus revealed himself to them through the breaking of bread and breaking down the scriptures. They were like, were not our hearts burning within us? They get up and go. I love that final part. They get up and they go. They get up and go, and they go and begin to tell everyone else, by the way, everything you've been hearing, it's true. Everything that's been going on, it's true. That God was willing to overcome death to simply be with you and I and us and the world and people in our community, everyone in our community, everyone in our world. So this is, God is always with us. I know that's sometimes hard for us to wrap our head and our hearts around. I get that. I understand that. I understand that. But if you continue to place your trust in Him, God will prove Himself to be trustworthy in the way that we need it the most. So our final song this morning is, and I'm going to ask you to stand with me, and I'm going to ask you to sing it loud, because this is a very hard song for me to sing because it's really outside my range. It's He Lives. And we'll sing, I believe we sing all the verses. I know that's like kind of weird to say and hear. Let's understand what that means exactly. The heart part is the emotion and the spiritual and the, all that kind of good stuff that goes on inside of us. Basically, we're just saying that Jesus is the leader of my life. And I'm willing to allow God in Jesus to lead me in whatever way I need to be led. That's hard, by the way. That's not easy. We all dig our heels in. We all do that. But through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, if Jesus Christ can overcome death with life, he can overcome our lives with his life, and to live in it so that we can be what God has always wanted us to be. So we're grateful for that. Let's pray. God, take us from here in the light of your love and your grace and your mercy, in the light of your resurrection, that hope that says you're risen, that you've overcome our death with life, and that you can overcome whatever is going on in our lives with what's going on in your life, so that, God, we can live the life that you want us to live. But that requires from us that even though you take 1,000 steps, God, we just need to simply, or maybe not so simply, trust in you. So, God, we surrender our lives to you, knowing, God, that it's hard to trust, and it's hard to trust you at times. So, God, in our circumstances, enable us to trust you. We pray this, God, in your Son's name. Amen.